So good morning. Hello everyone. Today we're going to report harvest and post-harvest technology. So core definitions. In post-production and handling, this introduces the journey of a product from the moment of harvest until it reaches the end consumer. Then post-harvest life. We define this as the shelf life or total duration a commodity remains usable. Perishables versus durables. It is important to distinguish between perishables, which lose value quickly after harvest, and durables, which can be stored for long periods. Concept of loss. Finally, we address loss, which is any decrease in the quantity or quality of the product intended for human consumption. Biological and environmental terms. Respiration. We start with respiration, the biological process where organic materials break down, releasing energy and heat, atmospheric conditions. We also look at the relative humidity and ambient conditions, which refer to the standard room level temperature and moisture affecting the crops. Ripening characteristics. Yeah. Ripening characters. A key takeaway here is the difference between climacteric fruits like apples and bananas, which continue to ripen after picking, and non-climacteric fruits like citrus and berries, which do not. Slide 3. Comparison of perishables and durable moisture and respiration. This table highlights that perishables have much higher moisture content and respiration rates compared to durables. Shelf life and texture. While perishables are soft and last only days or months, durables are hard and can last for several years. Economic impact. Notably, perishables suffer much higher percentage losses, primarily due to rooting and sprouting, whereas durables are mostly threatened by insects and molds. The importance of harvesting. Timing methods. Harvesting involves cutting or collecting crops using various tools or machines depending on the economic factors at play. Physiological maturity. The essential message here is that harvesting at the right stage of maturity ensures maximum sweetness and juiciness. Consequences of delay. If harvesting is delayed beyond the proper stage, it directly shortens the shelf life and negatively impacts the quality in the market. Maintaining quality after harvest is the golden rule. A critical point to remember is that quality cannot be improved after harvest. It can only be maintained through proper storage and transport. Post-harvest factors. Appropriate production practices and careful packaging are essential to keep the product produced at peak quality, maturity, and longevity. We include by noting that produce picked at the improper maturity levels, whether too early or too late, simply will not last as long in storage.
So, good day everyone. So, let's start with maturity indices. So, maturity is very important because it determines the quality of our produce, whether it's fruits, vegetables, or grains. So, it affects how well they are ripened, stored, and how they are being marketed and consumed. So, for annual and field crops, we determine by looking at its growth duration, so counting the days from planting to flowering or harvesting and then changing in colors, observing if grains, pods, or fruits show their mature color and then appearance of senescing foliage when leaves starts to dry or turn yellow and other physical signs like its size, shape, and diameter. So next is we have the perishability rate. So these tell us how fast our products can spoil and how long they can last. So we have here the very high. So these last less than 2 weeks, like broccoli and strawberries. Next is high. So maglast ni siya og 2 to 4 weeks like kana avocado o tomato. Ang moderate is galas siya mga 4 to 8 weeks like mga mangoes and mga potatoes. Then we have here the low which is maglast ni siya for at least 8 to 16 weeks like mga onion and garlics. And then we have here very low. So kanin siya is taas kay ang perishability rate, which is dugay siya madaot. So which is ang very low is maglast siya kanang more than 16 weeks like ang mga nuts and then mga dried fruits. So mo na siya ang kanang mga dugay kanang spoil or nga mga products. So knowing if kabalo ka ani is tawag na siya para for you to plan how to store and market it. So next is harvesting. So what is harvesting? Harvesting is the process of gathering or collecting mature crops from the field. It is the final step in crop production where we remove the produce that is ready for consumption or marketing. So now let's look at the different examples of harvesting shown here. So first is harvesting in potato. First is harvesting potatoes. Since potatoes grow underground, we use special machinery to dig deep into the soil. The machine lifts the soil and bring the potatoes to the surface so they can able collected easily. This method is very efficient compared to manual digging. So next is we have the harvesting of lettuce. So since lettuce is a leafy vegetable that can be damaged easily, it is usually harvested manually or with light equipment. We simply cut the plant at the base. It is important to handle gently because it wilts and spoils very quickly. So next is we have the harvesting kohlrabi or a hydroponic crop. So here we see harvesting kohlrabi in hydroponic systems. Since this is a controlled environment, harvesting is very systematic and clean. The plants are simply lifted or cut out of the system. So because there is no soil involved, the produce is clean and ready to packing immediately. So and lastly, we also have this transport of harvested greenhouse tomato. So right after harvesting, the fruits are placed carefully into containers or crates. So proper transport is part of the harvesting process to ensure that tomatoes remain fresh and free from bruises or damage until they reach the market or storage. So, as you can see, kaniyang method is ang pag-harvesting method ani is gadepende siya sa type sa crop na kanang imong. So slide 10 is the mechanical harvesting. So what is mechanical harvesting? So mechanical harvesting is the use of machines or equipment to perform the harvesting operation instead of doing it manually by hand. So this method is designed to perform tasks like digging, cutting, lifting, and separating crops automatically. As you can see here in the picture, this machine is used for root crops like carrots and leeks. It digs into the ground, lifts the crop out of the soil, and separates them from dirt and debris in one pass. So this method is very effective for large-scale farming because it saves time, reduces labor cost, and allows us to finish the work much faster. So now let's discuss the other harvesting practices shown in the picture. So first is kaning harvesting asparagus. So this is done manually by cutting the young spears just below the soil surface using sharp knife. It must be done carefully and at the right stage because asparagus grows very fast and becomes woody if not harvested on. Next is the harvesting of celery. So this crops is usually cut at the base just above the root system. It is important to keep the stalks intact and clean. So sometimes the specialized machines are used to lift and cut them, especially in large commercial farms. So next is the harvesting of leeks. So leeks grow underground with a long white shaft. So the soil needs to be loosened first before pulling. So mechanical harvesters are often used here to dig them out without breaking the stem. Then they are cleaned and trimmed on the spot. And lastly is the harvesting of the cucumber. So cucumbers needs to be picked frequently because they grow quickly. They can be harvested by hand or with machines that gently cut the fruits from the vine. Timing is important here to ensure they are the right size and still crisp. Each crop requires specific method to get the best quality produced. So finally, we have the principles of harvesting to keep our produce in good condition. So first principle is harvesting during the coolest time of the day. It is usually in the early in the morning, so and also keep them shaded, the harvest and produce. Next is handle the crops gently to avoid damage. And then we also have this. Crops for storage should be free from cuts, bruises, or diseases. So always remember that damage doesn't just look bad, it also allows bacteria and decay to set in easily. So that concludes of my report and thank you.
So good day everyone. So I'll be discussing the maturity indices. So let's define what is maturity indices. So ang maturity indices daw are measurable signs or criteria used to determine the stage of development of readiness of a product, especially crops, for harvest or use. So also, sa maturity indices, naa diri nabutang ang, of course, the maturity. So, unsa man ang maturity? So, ang maturity ko, no, it determines the quality of the fruit, flower, vegetable, roots, grain, or pod and better ripening storage, marketing, and consumption. So, mga common examples, ani, no, kaning banana, no? Kung maingon na ta sa maturity sa sa banana, 'di ba kay kuan man na siya, green man na siya no. So mopadulong na siya yellow kung matured na ang ato ang crop. So naatay annual and field crops. So diri upat ni sila kabuok based on their definition. Naay nakabutang diri sa first is growth duration. So sa growth duration daw, mo ni siya ang days from germination to flowering to or maturity. So that is the first one sa annual and field crops. Sa two, change in color, matong gingon gana ko ganina nga ang saging na green to yellow indicates the maturity sa ato ang crop. So napod ta ikatulo, appearance of sensing foliage, mao na siya. Ikaupat is other physical condition associated with maturity. Sa size, diameter, dira gid magmatter ang maturity, guys. So let's go to the next slide. Perishability rate. So Natay table diri no. Ang table diri na nakabutang is perishability index, potential life, also the product. So natay very high. So kung very high siya sa perishability index, ang mahitabo no, ang potential life niya sa ato ang mga products is less than 2 weeks lang daw. Nga naman, kay tungod kay ang ilang shelf life dali ra madaot no. So dali ra ilang storage life mo ng potential life no. 2 weeks lang daw ang mga broccoli, cauliflower, blackberry and strawberry based on our PPT. So the second one is high. So sa high, ang potential life doon kuno sa atong mga products like avocado, pineapple, celery and tomato mo kabat daw siya mga 2 to 4 weeks ang iyahang potential life. So napunta diri si moderate no. Si moderate na ang mga products sa moderate is mga example lang ni siya ha, not so general. Lemon, watermelon, mango, and potato. So, ang potential life to ani guys kay 4 to 8 weeks, no? So, also we have low perishability index na diri sila onion, apple, garlic, and pear. So, 8 to 16 weeks po ang ilahang potential life nga di sila madaot. Tapos, sa very low or greater than 16 weeks, we have nuts and dried fruits. Na mauna ang mga examples sa ato ang mga perishability rates. Okay. Let's go to the another slide which is the harvesting. So, mauni siya ang mga klase-klase na mga harvest na diri ang pag-harvest sa potato, harvesting of the lettuce, harvesting kohlrabi. Yes, mauna siya in a hydroponic crop. Mauna siya. Tapos, transport of harvested greenhouse tomato. Mauna siya ang harvesting. Kabalo naman siguro taon sa harvesting no guys. So, let's move on to the next slide. So, naadiri ang vegetable, mechanical harvesting of root vegetable. Natay mga ano diri kaning mga stages unsaon pag-harvest no, pero makita man nato sa video o makita nato sa PPT guys nga kung giunsa siya pag-harvest. So kaniday na mga machineries are not so present in our country because medyo mahal pa gid siya no, dili pa kaya sa ato ang agricultural industry. So let's move on. We have the other harvesting practices natay manual harvesting, machineries, harvesting celery, basta mao ra gini siya mga example sa mga harvesting. Gamay ra kayong mga harvesting na atong gina-apply here sa Philippines no. So that is all. Next slide is yes. So let's have the principles of harvesting. So what is the principles of harvesting based on our our presentation, of course. So let's read everyone, no? Harvest should be completed during the coolest time of the day, which is usually in the early morning, no? And produce should be kept shaded in the field. So makita nato no nga dapat gyud coolest daw nga time nato siya i-harvest tungod kay para dili siya madaot, dugay madaot ang iyang lifetime dili medyo taas-taas. That is why ginapili nato na mag-harvest ta og mornings. And of course, para sa dangato ang mga farmers, labi na here in the Philippines, ga-practice ta og manual harvesting mo nang init kaayo kung udto na ta mag-harvest kalain kung mag-harvest tag udto no. Napaikaduha no, the produce has to be handled gently, of course no. Kay kung dili nato tarungon nato ang crops pag-harvest, possibility nga madaot siya, mabunog. Of course, madaot na ang commodity, so magbaba ang iyahang value. So that is why kailangan nato siya ma-handled gently sama sa pag-handle sa imuhang uyab, tama. So sa crops destined for Storage should be as free as possible from skin breaks, bruises, spots, ruts, decays, and other deterioration. No? Dapat gid sila nga ibutang sila sa sakto nga sa butanganan, sakto nga temperature, sakto po sama sa pag-alaga gid nimo. Mura na silang mga bata, guys. Kailangan ginato i-care ang ato ang mga products so that nindot ang ato ang products mga gwapa. So dali na siya mahalin or dali na siya mahalin. So bruises. So unsa ni pagbasa day? Bruises and other mechanical damage not only affect appearance but provide entrance to decay organism as well. So naa kung based sa ato ang definition, no, kung ang nanakunoy mga bunog ang ato ang mga kaning mga commodities, atong mga crops, no, kay dira ko no magsugod ang sulod sa ato ang mga organisms, labi na sa mga ulod, mga pathogens, viruses, insects, and everything. So, maora na siya, guys, no, ang ako ang part. And let's move on or hear the other reporter.
Good day, everyone. I am JANNIEN, and today we're going to discuss a critical stage in agricultural supply chain, post-harvest storage. Looking at our image in our presentation, we see crates of produce stored in a controlled environment. Our main goal here is simple, to keep fruits and vegetables marketable. But what does marketable really mean? It means maintaining quality, the color, the crunch, and the nutrients at a level that consumers will actually pay for. In a world of agriculture, harvest is just the beginning. Post-harvest technologies are specifically aimed at maintaining that quality for as long as possible. Kasi tinuod lang, if we can keep the produce fresh, all the hard work of farmers goes to waste. We are essentially fighting against the natural clock of decay. Now, let's talk about the MVP of storage, temperature. As highlighted in our image in our presentation, temperature is the single most important factor in maintaining quality after harvest. Why is that refrigeration so powerful? It retards or slows down 5 specific types of deterioration. First is the biological aging. It slows down the ripening and textural changes. Mauna nga dali-dali ma-overripe ang inyong saging o kamatis. Next is metabolism. It lowers respiratory heat production. Next is moisture loss. It prevents wilting. Labi na sa mga leafy greens or cold storage, keeps them crisp instead of dry. The next is spoilage. It stops the invasion of bacteria, fungi, and yeast. Cold temperatures make it hard for these microorganisms to grow. Then lastly is the growth inhibition. It stops unwanted growth, like when potatoes start to sprout. Basically, cold storage acts like pause button for the plant's life cycle. Next, to master storage, we must understand that the produce is still buhi or alive even if it's picked. In our image, we see the 4K processes: respiration, transpiration, ethylene production, and the maturity process. Respiration is the plant breathing and using up its energy. Transpiration is the loss of water through skin. Ethylene is the ripening hormone. It's like a signal that tells other fruit to ripen too. And maturity is the final journey towards aging. If we don't manage these 4 pillars, paspas kayo mahurot ang shelf life. And as a student here in CMU, understanding these biological drivers is essential for any modern agricultural strategy. Let's look closer at respiration. Refrigeration is used primarily to control this rate. Respiration is essentially the oxidation of sugars, fats, and proteins within the crop cells. This process generates heat. Think of it like a fire. The more it burns, the faster the food reserves disappear, leading to a loss in flavor, nutritional value, and saleable weight. Bitaw, the higher the storage temperature, the higher the respiration rate. If the produce stays hot, it basically eats itself until it's no longer good to sell. This is why keeping the cold chain unbroken is non-negotiable. Now let's talk about handling. In our image, we see how mechanical damage affects the crop. Even a small bruise or scratch compromises the natural barriers of the plant. This leads to the two big problems: increased water loss and higher risk of pathogenic infections. Look at the graph. The moment an impact occurs, there is an immediate, sharp spike in ethylene production, followed by a rise in respiration. This is a stress response. The plant is essentially panicking, which accelerates aging and decay. Mauna nga bisan pag unsa ka bugna imong storage, if bunog ang produkto sa transportation pa lang, madaot gihapon na. Finally, let's look at the data in our image in the presentation. This curve shows the impact of storage temperature on the shelf life of vegetables. At 0 degrees Celsius, the shelf life is at its peak, around 8 units of time. But as the temperature climbs toward 30 degrees Celsius, that life expectancy drops almost to 0. This visualizes the exponential nature of decay. As an animal science major, I see clear parallels here, just like in livestock management. Environment and handling are everything. By controlling temperature and minimizing damage, we can ensure food security and reduce waste.
Good day, everyone. So this slide shows how temperature affects the respiration rate of crops after harvest. So respiration is the process where crops use oxygen and release carbon dioxide, and this continues even after harvesting. As temperature increases, respiration also increases. In fact, for every 10 degrees Celsius rise in temperature, the rate of deterioration becomes about 2 to 3 times faster. So meaning, mas paspas yun madaot ang crops when exposed to high temperatures. Also, high temperature increases transpiration or water loss, which leads to wilting, weight loss, and reduced quality. So, higher temperature results in faster respiration, faster water loss, and faster spoilage. That's why controlling temperature is very important in post-harvest handling. So next, let's look at the factors affecting respiration and transpiration. For respiration, external factors include mechanical damage like bruising or cuts and temperature, oxygen and carbon dioxide levels, and physical barriers like wax coatings. If a crop is damaged, mas paspas gyud ang respiration because the tissues are exposed. For transpiration naman, external factors include relative humidity, temperature, air movement, and altitude. Internal factors include the type of tissue and the condition of the crop. For example, leafy vegetable lost water faster compared to thicker crops. So in short, both respiration and transpiration is affected by the environment and the condition of the product. Mao nga importante gyud ang proper handling, storage, and transport. Next is ethylene production. Ethylene is a natural plant hormone that regulates ripening. Climacteric fruits like bananas and mangoes produce large amounts of ethylene during ripening. Murag self-accelerating ilang process once it starts its speed-ups. On the other hand, non-climacteric fruit produce a very little ethylene. However, too much ethylene can cause problems like over-ripening, faster softening, and shorter shelf life. Also, leafy vegetables are very sensitive to ethylene. Even small amounts can cause yellowing and wilting, so controlling ethylene exposure is very important to maintain the freshness and quality of crops. So now let's move to the relative humidity. Different crops requires different humidity levels to stay fresh. Fruits are around 85 to 95%. Dry products like onions and pumpkins is 70 to 75%. Root vegetables like carrots and radish is 95 to 100%. High humidity helps reduce water loss and keeps crops firm, but if it's too high, it can lead to decay, molds, or microbial growth. On the other hand, low humidity can cause drying and weight loss. So dapat sakto lang yun, balance humidity to maintain quality and reduce post-harvest losses. Next is pre-cooling. Pre-cooling is the first step in proper
temperature management after harvest. Its main purpose is to remove the field heat from freshly harvested crops as quick as possible. Field heat is the heat absorbed from the sun and the environment. If this heat is not removed immediately, mas dali yun ang deterioration and respiration remains high. Also, regular storage rooms are usually not enough for rapid cooling. That's why pre-cooling is done separately using special equipment or cooling systems. So in simple terms, pre-cooling helps slow down respiration, reduce water loss, and preserve the quality of the crops before storage or transport. And next is the importance of pre-cooling. Rapid pre-cooling is especially important for crops with high respiration rates. Examples include broccoli, strawberries, asparagus, and sweet corn. Mas dali gyud madaot if not cooled quickly. These crops need immediate cooling to maintain their freshness and extend shelf life. On the other hand, crops like garlic, onions, and matured potatoes have lower respiration rates, so they are less sensitive and can last longer even without immediate cooling. So overall, pre-cooling is very important because it helps maintain freshness, reduce spoilage, and improve the storage life of agricultural products. So daghang salamat sa inyong pagpaminaw.
Good day, everyone. I am EZRA PAULEEN HIROCAN, and today I am going to talk about the most common method of pre-cooling along with other topics in this unit. Most common methods of pre-cooling. First is room cooling. It is where you put the crops in a cold storage room and let them cool down slowly. It is the simplest and the cheapest way, but it takes a longer period of time. It takes 12 to 24 hours to be achieved, and this method is best for crops like apples, potatoes, and onions. Next method is forced air cooling. It is where you blow cold air through boxes of crops using fans. The moving air pulls heat out much faster than room cooling, and this method only takes 1 to 10 hours. It is best for crops like strawberries, grapes, and cut flowers. Third method is hydro cooling. It is where you dip or shower the crops with ice-cold water. And this method only takes 10 to 60 minutes since water cools faster than oxygen. It is best for crops like sweet corn, carrots, leafy greens like lettuce. Fourth method is top-off liquid icing. It is where you pour crushed ice over the top of crops in boxes or inject liquid ice slurry. The ice melts and keep crops cold during transport, and this method is best for broccoli, spinach, and green onions. Last method is vacuum cooling, where you put crops in a sealed chamber and remove the air. It makes water inside the crop evaporate and cools it down in 20 to 30 minutes. It is very fast but expensive, and this is best for crops like mushroom, lettuce, and cabbage. Chilling injury. Chilling injury is the damage that happens when some fruits and vegetables get too cold but not frozen. Damage can happen fast if it is very cold. And not all crops like the same cold. Some crops like mango, banana, and tomato get damaged by cold. And these crops, they store best at 13 to 17 degrees Celsius. Indicator of chilling injury. Pitting or other skin blemishes. It is the damaged spots or dents on the skin from cold. Next is internal discoloration. The flesh turns brown or gray inside. Failure to ripen. Fruit stays hard and won't mature. Preventing moisture loss. When storing fruits and vegetables, temperature is the most important. But humidity is important too. Dry air makes our produce lose water and look wilted, Water loss means less weight to sell, so malas ang profit. Most of our produce stays fresh best at 80 to 95% humidity. High humidity keeps our produce fresh but can cause more disease and mold. That is why we should always remember to keep our storage cool and humid to prevent wilt and weight loss. But we should watch out for diseases. Other aspects related to post-harvest storage of vegetables or perishables. Sanitation. Important to avoid infections by pathogens. Ethylene. It is a natural gas from plants that makes fruits ripen faster. Too much of it makes produce spoil quickly. Ang example ani is kato ato ang gagamiton nga kalboro for mango and banana. Modified atmosphere or MA. Changing the air and storage by lowering oxygen and raising carbon dioxide to slow down spoiling. Controlled atmosphere or CA. Same man ni sila sa MA. But the oxygen and carbon dioxide levels are watched and adjusted carefully all the time.
Good morning everyone, I am GEYROZAGA and now let's talk about modified atmosphere and controlled atmosphere. So kaning controlled atmosphere is used for long-term storage like keeping apples fresh for months, while ang modified atmosphere is used for shaping fruits like mangoes and bananas so they don't arrive mushy or overripe. So this table shows us how long different crops can actually stay fresh under these controlled conditions. Items like nuts and dried fruits can last more than 12 months. Apples and pears can last up to 6 to 12 months, while ang asparagus, broccoli, and strawberries usually last for a month. So kani siya nga table makatawa ni siya for us to plan which crops needs to get to the market the fastest. Once a fruit stops growing, it begins a breakdown phase, the green color fades, it starts to smell sweet, and the cells inside begin to soften. So ang goal sa post-harvest technology is to delay this breakdown phase for as long as possible until makaabot siya sa atong mga customers. So kung mahinong wala itong prutas, there are 5 major changes nga gakahitabo. First kay a color change, it loses its green color and gains red or yellow. Second is the taste change. Starches turns into sugars, making the fruit sweet. Third is the texture change. Organic acids and proteins shift, usually making the fruit softer. Fourth is the flavor change. So the bitter or sour taste goes away. And lastly, the softening. The fruit becomes less tough and easier to eat. To better understand post-harvest development, let's track the avocado's transition from harvest to peak flavor. So we can identify 5 specific phases defined by skin tone, texture, and resistance. Stage 1 is the heart. The fruit is firm, vibrant green, and completely unripe. So it is physically resilient, requiring more than 25 pounds of pressure to compress. Dili pa ni siya pwede makaon. Stage 2, the breaking, often called the pre-ripened stage, the avocado shows a slightly softening. If left on the counter, it typically reaches maturity within 48 hours. So stage 3, the precondition, the color is starting to darken. At this point, it's just about 3 days away from being perfect. So this is often the stage where retailers prepare them for display. Stage 4, the firm red. The skin is now deep purple-green. It is the ideal texture for slicing, as it yields slightly to a gentle touch but maintains its structure. It is roughly 24 hours away from being fully soft. Last, stage 5. At this final stage, the avocado is dark and soft to the touch. This is the guacamole stage, perfect for smashing or spreading. It will remain at its peak quality for 2 to 3 days at room temperature before ni siya ma-overripe.
So, good day everyone. So, I'll be discussing about slide 41 to slide 45. So, first is, this slide shows different stages of ripening the banana from stage 1 to stage 7. Stage 1 is all green. Usually, ginagamit din siya for shipping para dili pa siya dali madaot. And it also has a high starch content, so it's not yet ready to eat. Next stage is light green. Na siya light change of color pero mostly green paghihapon siya. Next stage is more green than yellow. Medyo mag-start na siya og yellow, but kani siya nga stage is daghan pagyapon iyang green, but ready na siya for warehouse handling. Stage 4 is more yellow than green. So, mas daghan na ang iyang yellow kaysa green, and it appears to be appealing sa mga eyes sa consumers. Then, 5 is the yellow with green tips. Moni usually ang ginapalit sa tao for perfect balance sa firmness and sweetness. The stage 6 is full yellow. It is indicated nga fully ripe na ang isa ka banana. And the stage 7 is the yellow flecked with brown. So, nana siya yung brown spots, which is naka-indicate nga overripe na siya, and muna siya ang ginagamit sa mga banana bread and smoothies. So, in this slide, it explains the post-harvest procedures or the steps after harvesting the crops. So, the flow sa process is mag-start ta sa harvesting. So, harvesting is ang pagkuha sa produce gikan sa farm. Next is reception, where the products are received, then checked. Next, after that is pre-cooling. So, pre-cooling is important para mapabugdaw dayon ang produce and malikayan ang pagkadaot og dali. Next is selection, cleaning, and disinfection. Diri, ginapili nato ang quality products and ginahimo ni siya aron mahimong hygienic and dili pod ma-damage ang products. Sunod is drying. Drying is ipauga siya aron malikayan ang spoilage. Next, after drying, naatay grading. Grading is where gi-classify ang products according sa iyang quality, size, o ang iyang appearance. Then, mag-apply data og other treatments nga pwede depende sa ato ang product. Next is the packaging and packing. So, muna siya ang ginabuhat para mag-keep ang warehouse cold sa storage and maprotektahan during transport. Next is storage. So, storage is the proper keeping sa warehouse or sa cold storage. Next is transport. This is kani siya ang process nga i-deliver na ang products padulong sa market or consumers. In short, post-harvest procedures are important to maintain the freshness o quality sa products hangtod maubot kani sa atoang consumers. So, this slide contains important post-harvest terms nga atong kailangan to remember. First is the curing. Curing means exposing our commodities to sunlight or controlled nga conditions. Next is trimming. This is the removal sa atoang unwanted parts sa atoang produce. Next is the handling. Kani siya ang pag-separate sa banana hands and removing sa mga stalk. Next is de-thorning. Means removing thorns, especially if ato ang mga produce is naa siya mga hait na parts. Next is grading. So, kaning grading is gina-classify atong products based sa quality standards. Next is the packaging. It is the process of protecting our products and ensuring na safe ang delivery gikan sa ato ang producer padulong sa consumer. So, these terms are important in post-harvest handling because they help preserve the product quality and ma-reduce na to ang losses. Important kini para kani siya nga mga terms is commonly ginagamit sa ato ang agriculture o sa food handling industry. So in this slide, this has the list sa mga post practices for horticultural crops. First is the plantation crops. So naa ang dire ang mga specific nga plants o usapod sa mga specific nga ginabuhat during some ani nga mga processes. Next is the fruit crops. Napod diri kasagara ang mga banana, mango, citrus nga mag-agi siya og sorting, cleaning og grading. Next is the vegetables. We have garlic, tomatoes, and etc. So next is the ornamentals. Kani siya is mga bulak such as rose nga natay ginatawag na dethorning o pulsing. So the last is this slide has the hazards associated with produce quality. First is the biological. Kini ang mga pest nga mukaon or mapadaot sa atoang makapadaot sa atoang mga products. Next is the contamination sa atoang chemical gikan sa pesticides. Pwede sabni ang mga toxins nga gikan mismo sa mga pathogens na nakahatag og pait or lahi nga lasa sa atoang produce. Next is mga mechanical. Kini ang mga bruises or mga garas sa atoang mga plants nga gi-harvest samtang on a travel. Mao ni siya ang hinungdan nga madali og kadaot ang atoang products. Fourth is the physical. Like pagka-freeze or pagkawala sa water sa atoang mga product. And lastly is the physiological. Kini ang natural nga process nga makadaot sa baligya sama sa sprouting, mga rooting, o senescence. So in conclusion, post-harvest practices minimize sa hazards. So if maayo ang imong pag-handle like cleaning, sorting, and packaging, it will result nga mas taas pa ang lifespan sa imong product o kuan ka og dako pa nga mga kita.